Hey YouTube! So I'm in a pretty weird place with my research, and I want to try to speak to some of it before I move on. Um, it's funny how sometimes we get into research and it clarifies all this stuff, and then sometimes it confuses things. Like it gets confusing, and that's when I try to stop and pull back and reorganize myself. So last time we were talking about blood types, and we were using the menorah to discuss the origins, right? The different blood types associated to the different 7 levels of heaven, and who everybody was and how it all got mixed together. And I'll say a little bit about that while we're here on that topic. One of the things that started to strike me about the story, which I'm getting out of like scriptures, like old stuff, and not just like standard Bible stuff. That stuff's really Masonic. You have to go deeper into I've talked about it before, the Gospel of the Holy 12, and the Humane Gospel is another one that I started researching with this person with, and it just goes on and on. And what I've discovered is these stories are bloodline stories. They are about origins and they are about bloodlines. And they've done something very sneaky and tricky with that, turning it into a spiritual, or religious thing. So that has been quite an undertaking, looking through all of that. And one of the things that struck me the most was I've been drawing, so I've got stuff on my hands. We had the original Earthling, right? The B negative female. And then we had the A come in, AB, Abel, Adam, supposedly sent by God, right, to do this bloodline stuff here. Sneaky shit, man, I tell you. So one of the things that started to strike me was, okay, where is the B negative male? Where is he? Who is he? Why is his identity completely missing from all of these stories? Where'd he go? Why is there no reference to him? Why is it only her? So this really started me thinking, like as women here, we feel, I made a video recently saying, I feel like we lost our name. And, my dear friend Aphrodite chimed in and started saying, womb this, womb that. Well, in my research, that's completely correct. A wombat is pretty close to where woman came from. So we did have womb, and that is a reference to our portal. Okay, so the B negative man. Here's the real victim of the story. Here's the real, what happened to him. He is the true partner of the first woman, not Adam. This is a fallen angel. This is a fallen angel. Come down to breed with the human. So they really shoved under the rug the B negative male. And from the stories that you read, they were the ones who had the direct connection to what the laws were, and they're going to call them priests and stuff like that. But I'm starting to think even more that is a corrupted part of the story as well. To avoid the corruption is it's practically impossible. But when these O's came in, they murdered the B negative man. They have been on a quest to kill him throughout this whole process. Why? Because they want their bloodlines, that A and that O bloodline, to be mating with the human here. We talked about that before. That's the GMO. And I really couldn't help but notice that B negative man was missing from the story altogether, across the board, not in the story. And so unless Eve, was here and she was producing eggs that were fertilized on their own, and who knows, dropping from her body like a seed, like a tree. Because the more I search into origins, I find so many correlations between humans and trees. That there's a part of me that's like, well, did she used to just reproduce herself in this way? Where there wasn't like the sex and the birth and the relationship with the man? Or was that B negative man here? Now, I think he was here. I think that the sex and the sexual relationship and the production of children is a beautiful thing that was corrupted. To how and to what depth, I can't say. But I do think that the B negative man is missing from the story. And I find that to be interesting. So that led me more to this idea of, the Alpha and the Omega coming in and taking over this place. And we know the Alpha and the Omega rule here. And that started me thinking, so as you get into the bloodline stories, which is what all those religious texts are, bloodline stories that have been corrupted by the spirit realm, in my opinion. So once you get into that, you realize that, the true human that was here, that was messed with in the first place, I mean, they're almost extinguished from the bloodlines. It's pretty interesting. They're still here. There's still B negatives and there's still B negative males, but they're a very extremely tiny percentage of the population. And, you have to wonder what is it all about? Like why the interference and what is trying to be accomplished? So that immediately leads me to, and what I got into with this, and I've mentioned it before, is the etymology and is the use of names. As soon as you get into these bloodline stories, it all becomes about names. And what I found interesting is the Aramaic language, which is what you kind of have to pull it all back to. It's mostly consonants, and the vowels were insinuated through the consonant. One of the things that the different bloodlines that came in inserted were vowels. And, there was such a mixing and melding of the sounds. I really believe, I don't like that word, I'm really starting to look at to the depth of the use of names, sounds, being, well, we know it's the spell, but more than that, the creation of the reality, and their attempt to meld this here with the spirit realm. So we are biological. Everybody agree with me there? We're biological. We are containers filled and animated with blood. It is the blood that is the frequency. And we talked about, remember earlier, the blood frequencies. Now there's 29 different blood frequencies. And that is our identity more than anything else is our identity. So we're biological. We're blood. We're part of a bodily system, I think. And all of this interference is to pull us out of that biology, which is our identity. So they're taking our identity when they do this. And where is it being funneled? It's being funneled into the spirit realm. Even our bloodline stories about our origins have been reconfigured into these spiritual aspects. And I think that the names are such a huge part of it. I started looking up the names of Satan. And I won't go into it all. The lists and lists and lists. But every name I researched brought me back to that entity. And whether you call it Satan or Lord, Father of Lies, Prince, any reference to Prince or Lord, that's Satan, okay? The devil, Metatron, the snake, even the wise one. But anyway, any name that you can think of is in reference to Satan. And we're going to go all the way up with this to the word God. Satan. Wally, chill out. It's nothing. Lay down. Good boy. And that was what really struck me to make a video and start talking about this name thing today. Because one of the things that you'll hear over and over in these scriptures, which I wrote down a couple, there is no other name under heaven given among people by which we must be saved. There's constantly this reference in the Bible to names. Then you will call my name. You will come to me and you will pray to me. You will search for me with all your heart and you will find me. I will let you find me. These are just some of the scriptures I found about the invocation of names. This message is from the Lord. The Lord, you know who that is. I will bring you back from your captivity. I forced you to leave this place, but I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have sent you, says the Lord, and I will bring you back to this place. And this goes on and on. This reference to self as Lord and the calling of name. Only by my name will you be saved. That's the Jesus, Zeus. There's some more names for Satan. Jesus, Zeus. And almost all of the archetypes that I'll look into, Egyptian and otherwise, I just don't want to go into these long lists of names. They come back to the same entity, which is trying to get you to call its name and to use its name in reference to almost everything and to use it so automatically that you don't even know that you're using it. So the calling of the name. And people say Lord God all the time. All the time, and there's all kinds of scriptures and references to Lord God. This is the biggest deception of all. And as I studied into this, I had a dream the other night. And in the dream, I'm somewhere, and I'm just listening. It's like overhearing people talking at like a checkout at a grocery store or something. And one person says to the other, do you know what the true kiss of God is? It's a bite from a snake. And I came out of this dream and was like, oh yeah, well, yeah, yes. I mean, it goes all the way to the very biggest name that people use to invoke the spirit world, which is going to be God. So remember we talked about the story of Eve and Adam, in the garden, and the snake tempts Eve with the flesh and the blood, the forbidden fruit. Oh, and they had this conversation with God afterwards about, we tried it. And there's no separation between those two entities. The God in the garden and the snake in the garden is the same individual. Okay? It is the same person. So it is the snake or the God that came in and interfered with the different blood types. With the different blood types from the different levels of the seven heavens inside our bubble, and created a spiritual story about sort of melding humanity with the spirit world. And so you guys know about the 7 levels of heaven. Aphrodite turned us on to a video by, Bro Sanchez, who does one on the 7 levels of heaven, which was pretty good. I liked it, and you know all the different, this is a very common depiction. But see, I really love this one because it shows it in concentric rings, right? Which is closer to the plasma model that we've been drawing, the concentric rings. And I found a few that have concentric rings. Concentric rings, right? And this one's so silly, but a lot of flat earthers have seen that one in reference to the 7 levels of heaven. But they show all the earths on the bottom like all stacked up, which is pretty silly. But I attempted to draw the 7 levels of heaven today. I was going to draw it on this big board I had made for you guys. I was going to draw it with you, and it was so challenging to draw it that I decided not to do that. And interestingly, the way it's depicted in most places with the stars is different than how I studied it with the bloodlines. They show them in different order. And I only found one that I thought was similar to the bloodline research, which was this one, which actually shows the 3rd level as being pretty hellish and there being a demon there. And it has a lot of animal references as well. So then I ended up drawing this. Now this is terrible. But I think that it depicted better than any other drawing I was trying to do of the 7 levels of heaven within the electromagnetic fields, right? So I drew our little choke ring down at the bottom, which is north of here, Asgard. We talked about that in a previous video. And then this would be the ring that we live on here on Earth. And then I put the earthly planes in like green or brown, and I did all the domes in blue. Okay, and then I put it inside this big red electromagnetic field. And that's how it would actually work out like this. So when the matter comes in and collects at this choke ring where it gets in, it's going to be in concentric rings because of the bowl-shaped magnetic field. And so if you're building up concentric rings in a bowl-shaped magnetic field, each one is going to be uphill of the next one. Now, how far uphill? Fuck, I don't know. We don't even know where we are. We can't even go out and look around. So it's all speculation. But if you follow that plasma model and look at it and then consider the 7 heaven cosmology, then I feel like that's how it would lay out. In concentric rings within the bowl-shaped magnetic fields, dome after dome after dome, leading upward. And heaven, heaven is just a word for lights in the sky. So you've got the different heavens, okay? And then, this is obviously missing. One of the things I thought was pretty cool that the guy in the Bro Sanchez video said was about the very center, having that Mount Meru, in the middle there. And in that video, he was talking about how that is that magnetic quality of that center core is the thing that creates those concentric circle rings going outwards. That there would be a charge, a pole in the center that pushed the matter outwards, creating the rings. So I think that's completely, I thought that was cool. I mean, and who knows, we've never been there. Some people thought it was a tree that went up. It's mostly referenced as a mountain, which would make sense magnetically. Then you look into the biology, and a lot of our mountains and stuff the biology shows that they're dead life forms, petrified. So if this is where the plasma comes through and changes directions, well, that makes sense too, that even if it was a tree at one point, that it would be a mountain now, petrified through plasma events, right? And then there's the invisible columns. They show that all the time, the invisible columns that hold up the ice domes. And I'm kind of looking into that because I think that there's something to that I haven't quite figured out yet, cosmology related. But if we're inside this electromagnetic field and we live on these concentric rings, and you have different levels of rings, and since the plasma is coming this direction, we can't see them. According to Like Brian's model, he says when the plasma changes directions, we're going to see things in the sky that we've never seen before. And so I'm speculating that it's going to be something like this, that we're going to see the different levels of matter that collect as they go. And are these heavens like some heavenly place where God lives, where you're going to go off and live? I don't think so. I think this is all biological. I think that's your identity. And I think that these are different places that we can experience reality. And I can't help but go back further in my mind and go, is the whole 7 levels part of this prison? Because I don't know if you've read, and I've mentioned it several times, I do still recommend it, Dr. Neruda's 5th interview, where he talks about us being in a bubble and getting out of the bubble. Now, is this our bubble? And these are the different ways we can experience life? Or is this whole thing the bubble? And there's more out here? Well, I would think, once you get to realize that we're living in these concentric rings that have all these different realities to them, of course there's going to be more. Perhaps infinitely. So also have to think about, I just want to relate that these different blood types and this genetic thing that happened here and its relationship to these 7 levels is biologically some pretty sound information if you look at the electromagnetic fields and how they form matter into concentric rings. One's going to be higher up than the next one due to the bowl-shaped field. Okay, so what I want to say, to bring it all together, is that some of this contains a realm of spirit and the place where you don't live in matter, right? The where the demons live, the spirit realm. And I believe that's who feeds, there's that word again, belief. I'm thinking that's who's feeding here, right? Is the spirit world, God, the snake, Jesus, all these names, Satan. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. That's who's feeding here. That's who's trying to get your blood, corrupt your blood, feed off your blood. And I have a few different theories around this, but I'm trying to stay focused today. If you can tell, I don't want to talk for too long. So there's this spirit realm that's constantly trying to get you to invoke it. So what is that about? So I'm just down at the grocery store a little bit earlier today, and I'm standing in line. I heard Jesus and God 6 times while I was just standing at the checkout from the people around me who were interacting with each other. Oh, you dropped this, it's constant. It's an automatic. It's not coming out of you because you're trying to invoke something. It's not coming out of you because you're religious. It's coming out of you because it has been so ingrained within your vernacular that it's just a constant. It's constant. So what is this spirit realm? If you're a biological blood container having a experience within matter, and you spend time praying. Remember that thing I read about, pray to me. You think about these words. To pray to a spirit realm is to become their prey. Think of the dualistic meaning of that word. So you make yourself prey to a predator, a spirit demon, by invoking them and putting your energy into the spirit realm. And we're all taught that from a very early age. I think no matter where we come from in the world, because there's different religions and stuff, but every religion has you praying. Everything in that regard has you putting your force, your life force, into a spirit realm. And you're taught this from so young to ask and to pray and to think of God, the creator Okay, here we go. To think of the creator as a non-physical spirit realm. Well, I maintain that if there's a creative force, which you and I are a part of, the father and the mother, that's biological. It's a biological thing that we're doing here. It is a vibrational reality. You know, it's sound. It's tangible. So all the sneaky ways in which they get you to put all of that into their spirit realm. Well, I think the sneakiest and most obvious one that we know of right now are our black mirrors, right? Even this thing that I'm looking at right here. This is, and anytime you're spending time on these devices and in this mode, are you in matter? Are you in a biological moment? Or are you in a spirit realm? As I maintain that this is the spirit realm. This is a very tricky way to get you to pull all of your attention and energy into a spirit realm. And I hope to see us all walk away from this stuff at some point. I know that we use it currently to interact and to learn and grow from each other. And I'm doing it too. But I'm starting to see more and more what it is and for what it is. And that it is a pull into spirit realm. And it's almost like the world has been constructed to have points of matter be places of discomfort. And so, you know, it's easier to be in these realms because it's just not as painful. It's not as hot. It's not as cold. It's not as hungry as the world of matter can be. So I really truly think that our sound and resonance and the way that we use words is at play here in a very insidious way. And I think, you know, the first thing you do is just become aware of it. Become aware that that's the trick. And to think about the words that we use. And as I was saying earlier, this person I'm studying with who pulls all this language out and pulls it back to Aramaic, you know, the more he pulls it backwards, the more you've got the Allah, Shama, Gatma, you know, those consonant sounds. And you can see that from that, a reality is created. And, you know, we haven't been in charge of it. And I'm pretty sure that this is merely because of where we're at within the flow of the blood, you know, back to this, you know, right now we've got that plasma coming in. I turned that upside down, but I didn't really draw it that way. But we have the blue world, which I put down here today. And that is, you know, we live in this place where we're blinded, right, by that focal point of plasma. And we know that the law, the satanic law in this realm is inversion. You know, sometimes I use words like complicated and complex when I refer to what they're doing here, but it is actually super simple. Turn it upside down. Turn it upside down. And there's different kind of ways they can turn it upside down and backwards. You know, so it can be trickier, but it's still just flipped upside down. Well, everything's upside down here because that is the nature of the plasma flow that we're in. If you think about it in the biological terms of blood, the blue vein and the red vein, you know, we're not going to live in the world that is going to make sense, that is going to be not inverted, where we can see and know where we are, know who and what we are until the plasma changes directions. And I would imagine that this is, I'm starting to think that this is part of the process. We spend time here, and we spend time in other places. So I don't want to call it bad and wrong, but I think there is a blinding and there is a leading away from who you are and what you are as the blood, as a biological creature. So how do we get through being here? How do we deal with the weight of what has happened here? well, we start to open our eyes to it. And part of that to me is realizing what God is and what the deception is, so that we can see past it, so that we can see each other for what that means as far as family goes. And so I'm going to stop here. I feel like I'm still struggling a little bit conveying my research. I feel like there's going to be a point where more of it comes together, and I'm in this phase right now of studying names and linguistics and bloodlines, and it honestly gets to where I feel like I don't even know how to talk about it. So that's why I'm making this video today, just to try to get through some of it so that I can get to another place for it. But I feel like there is no name here. There's no name for the creative force at this point that is reliable. And while we wander through this desert together, we invoke no names. Because how can we know? How can we trust that? It's like deciding, okay, I've been blinded, I've been fooled, I've been tricked, I've had everything turned upside down. So am I going to trust this? And look at these godly people too, and the horrible things that they say. They talk like demons. They're telling other people they're going to burn and be judged, and it is so in opposition to what they say, to all the other stuff. They say, oh, God is love and all da 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 da. Well, what, God is love until he decides to kill everybody or drag you off to some hell, and none of it computes. So while we wander here together, while we are blinded, and while we are in the place where, in my opinion, the blood is being cleaned, we invoke no names. Until we understand this better, we cannot cry out these names. This vocalization, this singing sound, this is the creation of all that is. Look at those electromagnetic fields. This is frequency. We must be cautious. We must be careful. And we must remember, I feel like I should read this. We are clearly biological and live in nature with animals, while constantly being pulled into the spirit realm, a place of demons and ghosts. Our phones are time in the spirit realm. TV, movies, games, even your job can be time in the spirit realm. The drive and whip on humanity to be spiritual, to have faith, to imagine, to dream, to be in the mind, and to trust unseen forces. But there is no name for the creative forces. To name it while lost in this desert is to name the one with many names, with all the names. So he's got all the names. All the names belong to that entity. And I think it's funny, like in the Harry Potter movies, they've got the villain as he who shall not be named, because they like to flip things and invert them. That stuck out to me. So the kiss of God is the bite of a snake. And until we understand more about our orientation here, I say we invoke no names. So I'm going to stop there. I hope that was interesting to listen to and made some sense. And I'm going to work on my seven heavens drawing and relate it again to the blood types when I can figure out how to draw it with more accuracy. And I'll just show you this one again. It's all just matter. They're all just places to live and spend time. And I'm thinking too that the stars that we see and stuff, they do reference these places as gateways. The Star Gate. There is a Star Gate. There are gateways to these different realms. and perhaps a gate directly in the center. And maybe only the plasma can take you there. Only the blood has the true frequency to understand. And at this point, that's the only thing I'm going to trust is the blood, is my own blood frequency to lead me to where I'm going. And I'll quickly say too, I was studying the endocrine system, and the pineal gland in the head is the one that keeps track of light and also like sexual maturity. Well, I find that interesting that those go together within that gland. So I imagine if the plasma switched directions and there was light all the time, that our sexual aspect is going to be really different. It's going to be something that it isn't in this inverted space. So once that pineal gland gets hit with the plasma flow coming from the other way, that means our sexual component is going to be different as well. And you know how they say that they feed off of the endocrine? Is that what it is? Am I saying that right? No, the endocrine system. What am I trying to say? It's like the little soccer ball, the little octagon thing or whatever that symbolizes it. It's more complicated than that, but adrenochrome. And that is what goes into the blood from the endocrine system, from your glandular system, when you are scared and when you're in fear or terror. And that's what they're feeding off of, is the adrenochrome within the blood. So this is all about blood and their access to it and your blindness of their access to it. And I do think it has to do with the direction of the plasma flow. So it could be as simple as once we no longer live in the inverted plasma and we are back in the correct flow of the plasma, this is all going to make sense. This is all going to come into a state of understanding. We're going to know more about our containers, about our blood, about our origins, and about this place. That is coming. I mean, that's why I'm sitting here doing all this research and trying to figure this out, because it is the next stage of what we are to know. We're done being farmed here. I think everyone's over it. So, okay. So I'm going to stop there and wish you all a really great day. And thanks for tuning in. Much love.